The great James Earl Jones had a very successful 1970s as well. He was getting a lot of recognition for stage work, for film work. Eventually played the voice of Darth Vader in 1977 Star Wars. But a movie he did with Rod Serling still remains a hidden gem in his oeuvre. It was supposed to be a TV movie, but according to sources, it had enough of a strong plot and strong acting sense that it was released theatrically. Although he didn't make a lot of money, it still was unique for its time. It's called The Man. Now, this 1972 American political drama was directed by Joseph Sargent. Initially, Sidney Poitier was linked to it. And in the movie, James Earl Jones plays Douglas Dillman, the President pro tempore of the United States Senate, who succeeds to the presidency through a series of unforeseeable events, thereby becoming both the first African-American president and the first wholly unelected one. The screenplay, again written by Serling, is largely based on The Man, a novel by the great Irving Wallace. Now, in addition to being the first black president more than 36 years before the real-world occurrence, the fictional Dillman was also the first president elected neither that office nor to the vice presidency, foreshadowing the real-world elevation of Gerald Ford by less than 25 months. Now, in an interview with Greg Braxton of the LA Times that ran January 16, 2009, 4 days before Barack Obama was inaugurated as president, Jones was asked about having portrayed the fictional first black U.S. president on film. He replied, "I have misgivings about that one. It was done as a TV special. Had we known it was to be released as a motion picture, we would have asked for more time and more production money. I regret that." Now, there's rumors that the movie was not shown on TV because it couldn't get enough sponsors. That's for the mists of time. It would have done well no matter what sponsor or not, because ABC and Lorimar put great effort into it, and Lee Rich, of course, produced it, who originated Lorimar, so there was a lot of money backing this movie. Now, in the film, President Fenton and the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives are killed at a summit in Frankfurt, West Germany, when the palace hosting the event collapses. By law, the serving president, upon the death of the elected one, would take over. The vice president would take over, but Vice President Noah Calvin is suffering from a terminal condition and refuses to assume the office. Now, Arthur Eaton, the Secretary of State, corrects the popular assumption that he's the next in line of succession. Of course, we heard what happened with Alexander Haig and the Reagan shooting. Now, he explained the law had been amended by the Presidential Succession Act of 47, and that the next successor is the President pro tempore of the United States Senate, which is Douglas Dillman. Dillman, a black man, is sworn in and arrives at the White House to assume office. Eaton's outspoken wife, Kay, berates her husband for not pushing to become president, even though it would violate the succession order. Eaton assures her that he will become president once Dillman proves unable to handle the job. Now, in the morning, Eaton and his advisors arrive at the Oval Office, and Eaton begins maneuvering himself into a position as the power behind the throne. Eaton gives Dillman a binder of briefing notes, including responses to news media questions that support the positions of the Fenton administration. Now, when Dillman meets the press for the first time as president, he initially follows Eaton's instructions. When Dillman stops to consult notes after each question, an aggressive reporter accuses Dillman of being a puppet. Eaton scribbles a note and has it taken forward to the president. Dillman realizes that he's being manipulated, crumples Eaton's note, and shoves the briefing binder aside. He proceeds under his own initiative, deciding that as president he will have to make his own decisions. Now, Dillman, a political moderate, is confronted by both activists and extremists about his skin color. Robert Wheeler, played by the great George Stanford Brown, a young black man, is sought for extradition by South Africa for an attempt to assassinate the defense minister of that country. Dillman offers his help when the young man claims he was Burundi at the time of the assassination attempt. Now, Senator Watson introduces a bill that would require congressional approval of any dismissal of a cabinet member by the president. Eaton doesn't tell Dillman about it, but several black congressmen have a meeting with Dillman to discuss their concerns. Dillman believes they are talking about a minority rights bill and pledges his support until one of the congressmen corrects him. Dillman subsequently reprimands Eaton and a group of senior leaders, questioning why such an important bill had been not brought to his attention. Now, when Senator Watson visits the South African embassy, the ambassador comments that his own country would never have a black man as president. He shows a news film to Watson that proves Wheeler was in South Africa during the assassination attempt. The scandal threatens Dillman's presidency, and Dillman obtains Wheeler's confession and hands him over for extradition. Diak alienates his activist and adult daughter Wanda. Wheeler calls the president a house nigger, and the president responds that black men don't burn churches and kill 4 children. They don't hunt down a Martin Luther King with a telescopic sight. Passion may drive you to the streets to throw a brick, but to buy a gun, plant an alibi, and travel 5,000 miles, and to kill a human being is bloodless, worthy of the selective morality of Adolf Eichmann. Typical Rod Serling prose. Now, the president addresses reporters at the Governing Party's National Convention, where Eaton is now openly challenging Dillman for the presidential nomination, now with Watson's support. Dillman explains that some people think violence is the only answer, but he will rely on diplomacy and peaceful means. He washes his hand of the Wheeler issue. A reporter asks if he's still running for the presidential nomination. Dillman replies that he's going to fight like hell to win the nomination over Eaton. To the tune of Hail to the Chief, he's introduced to the convention delegates. Now, Martin Balson plays Jim Taylor, Burgess Meredith, great performance of Senator Watson, Lou Ayres as Noah Calvin, William Wildam as Arthur Eaton, Barbara Rush as Kay Eaton, George Stanford Brown as Robert Wheeler, Janet McLaughlin as Wanda, Patrick Knowles as South African Counsel, Martin E. Brooks as Wheeler's lawyer, and Simon Scott as Hugh Gaynor. Now, film critic Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote in his review, "The Man would open yesterday at the Cinema One Theater is the triumphantly short film version of Erling Wallace' Almost Endless, which was 770 pages novel about the first black president of the United States. At one time or another, most of us have seen feeling ceilings fall, in kitchens and living rooms and bathrooms, usually because of faulty plumbing. It's no fun and always a mess, with the plaster, dust and all. But this one was obviously a whopper, being high and probably marble. Its indication of difficulty had relating to the man that for the rest of the movie, which only exploits ceilings as melodramatic conveniences, I kept wondering what really happened. Hadn't anyone, the CIA or somebody, checked out the palace? Had the Russians been fiddling around? Did a loo leak? I simply couldn't buy the casual explanation. Well, you know those old palaces, Jim. About halfway through The Man, one comes to realize that, in his own unwitting way, the film is much more interesting in contemplating incompetence than in presenting any ideas about politics, race relations, international diplomacy, personal ambition, courage, or what have you. If The Man were a better movie, it might possibly be offensive. It isn't. It's silly and innocent, and when the band strikes out Hail to the Chief, it invites an idiotic tear. Rod Serling, who wrote the story and screenplay, has reworked and recut the original novel as he wore a tailor remodeled an old-fashioned suit to conform with current fashions, and Joseph Sargent, whose direction of the Forbin project I admired, has made sure that's all in focus. Now, The Man was released in theaters on July 19th, 1972, and again, Gerald Ford eventually assumed the vice presidency on December 6, 1973. His appointment having been approved by both houses of Congress after Spiro Agnew had resigned. Ford assumed the presidency 8 months later, on August 9, 1974, pursuant to Richard Nixon's resignation. Now, the people can read about the different aspects of the movie. Now, the film, again, was originally announced for Sidney Poitier in 1965. Now, Jack Benny made a cameo appearance in the movie, and that was his last appearance in a film. Now, Publishers Weekly said in a 1972 article that it was released theatrically that it was due to the quality of the film, but contemporary sources claimed that the controversial elements scared off potential sponsors. Now, ironically, they played father and daughter in The Man, but James Earl Jones was only 2 years older than Janet McLaughlin in real life. Now, the great William Windom portrays a fictional U.S. Secretary of State in his film. However, he's a direct descendant of a real-life presidential cabinet secretary of the same name who lived from 1827 to 1891. And he served as Treasury Secretary 2 non-consecutive terms under Presidents James Garfield, Chester A. Arthur briefly, and Benjamin Harrison. So I haven't seen the movie in quite a number of years, and is barely referred to in any Rod Serling biography or stuff like that. But Serling, at the time, he was writing, he had wrote this Night Gallery, and he was also involved in these In Search of Movies as narrator. So Rod was always working, but I've never read early Irving Wallace's big book, but I think the idea, it predicted a modernization of the presidency, and with all the different sides, you're seeing more people of color ever before a run on both sides of the major two tickets in the states. But James Earl Jones, Sidney Poitier are the two people that compete. You can see as the president, because James Earl Jones is presidential, and Poitier went a little bit over the top because nobody could tell Sidney Poitier what to do. James Earl Jones has that kind of rough street vernacular, but like I said, you look at the character he played in Field of Dreams. There's a lot of connection with this character and the man. Not saying it's the same portrayal, but the same aspects of his personality. You don't mess with James Earl Jones, because and that's, they picked him because he's a black person beyond reproach. Who's ever criticized James Earl Jones? Do you know of anybody? It's James Earl Jones. It's Jack Johnson. It's the great actor. TV and otherwise. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's the latest on the Rod Serling podcast. If you like what you're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget, requests are always accepted and always highly considered. Thanks for listening, and happy early Thanksgiving in Buffalo. Keep shoveling. Have a good one. Bye.